Okay, so picture this. A historic WNBA All-Star Weekend. The kind that's supposed to be all about empowerment, unity, and oh yeah, getting paid what you're worth. The energy was high. The statements were bold, and the shirt said it all. Pay us what you owe us. A full-on solidarity moment. But then, Kelsey Plum grabbed a mic, and with just one offhand jab, the entire narrative derailed faster than a post-game Twitter thread. If you're here for the real story and not the filtered version, subscribe. And if you're sticking around for the next meltdown, you better definitely subscribe. Because instead of rallying behind each other in the name of equal pay, Plum decided to throw some not-so-subtle shade at Team Clark. Yes, that Clark. Caitlin Clark. The rookie phenomenon who basically is the WNBA's marketing plan right now. And even though Caitlin wasn't even physically present, thanks to an injury that benched her from the festivities, she somehow became the headline, and not in the way anyone planned. The chaos started during what should have been a routine press conference. Nothing wild, just a Q&A with the league's biggest names sitting side by side, draped in those protest tees, ready to make a united front. But Kelsey Plum, in the middle of discussing the importance of showing up and speaking out, casually tossed this grenade into the conversation. Some people's teams didn't even show up to the meeting. The room shifted. Energy changed. Faces tensed. Reporters perked up like they just sniffed viral potential. No names were mentioned, technically, but the subtext was loud. Everyone in that room, and everyone watching the clips that would immediately make the rounds on Twitter, Instagram, and SportsCenter, knew exactly who she was referring to. Let's be real. Caitlin Clark is a WNBA right now. Whether that's fair or not to the veterans who've built this league from the ground up, she's the reason ticket sales are breaking records. She's the reason jerseys are flying off the shelves. And yes, she's also the reason people who never watched a WNBA game before are suddenly arguing about free throws on TikTok. So calling her out, even indirectly, in front of Mike, in front of cameras at that moment, it wasn't just petty. It was strategic, and it backfired. Because even though Caitlin was recovering from her injury, she wasn't about to sit there and take the heat like a passive rookie. Oh no, she responded, not with a long clapback or a notes app apology, but with precision. One single comment under one of Kelsey's Instagram posts. Some of us don't need meetings to make statements. Boom. That's it. No yelling. No hashtags. Just vibes. The kind of digital backhand that leaves a sting without even raising your voice. And suddenly, all eyes were back on Caitlin. Not because of what she didn't do, but because of how effortlessly she flipped the narrative. The subtle power move didn't just get people talking. It got people choosing sides. And spoiler alert, the internet has a favorite. Now here's where it gets even messier. The entire All-Star event was supposed to be this banner moment of player empowerment. Everyone wearing the same shirt, speaking out about pay equity, making it crystal clear. The league can't keep profiting off these athletes without cutting a proper check. But instead, thanks to that one comment, the storyline pivoted. It went from look at us standing together to why didn't your team show up to the meeting? The shirts were still on, but the unity had already cracked. And fans noticed. Commentators called it out immediately. Like, why is Kelsey Plum calling out another team, especially one whose star player is injured, when the point of the protest was to stick together? If anything, it made the entire display look performative, like a PR play rather than a genuine moment of collective action. Caitlin's absence at the game only made things worse. Without her on the court, ticket resale prices nosedived. The arena had empty seats. Ratings took a dip. It was a kind of drop you can't ignore, and it put a spotlight on some of the leagues when awkwardly dancing around. Their massive, undeniable dependence on one player. And Kelsey Plum's comment didn't just spark a feud, it exposed a fault line. Because behind the public calls for equality and sisterhood, there's a growing tension in the league that no one really wants to say out loud. Caitlin Clark is a rookie, but she's also the meal ticket. And that's uncomfortable for the players who've been grinding for years without getting even a fraction of that attention. Now, is that Caitlin's fault? Not really. She's just showing up, doing her job, drawing crowds, and not embarrassing herself on live mics. But When someone becomes that powerful that quickly, the resentment brews, especially when the spotlight that should be shared suddenly feels like a solo act. Still, you got to give Caitlyn credit. She played this one perfectly. No petty beef, no dramatic interviews, just a sharp comment and a disappearing act. Let the headlines and the fans do the rest. And oh, did they. The internet went feral. Threads broke down the feud like it was a Real Housewives reunion. Reddit dug up past interactions between the two. Old footage was clipped, reanalyzed, slowed down meme-feed. Every smile, side-eye, and subtle shrug became evidence in the court of public opinion. And guess who walked away with a jury on her side? Let's just say there's a new MVP of passive-aggressive internet dominance, and it's not Kelsey Plum. Even media outlets, ones that usually avoid leaning into gossip, couldn't help but cover the drama. ESPN ran with the headline. Bleacher Report posted a reel. Even late-night Twitter, which usually dips out of sports, had opinions. The feud was no longer niche. It was mainstream. And that's kind of the point, right? Because as much as the WNBA wants to push unity and empowerment, and they should, this whole situation underlines a deeper contradiction. The league is asking for respect, recognition, and equal pay. Again, they should, but it's also leaning hard on the commercial appeal of one single star to get there. That's a tough spot. On one hand, Caitlin Clark's popularity has brought unprecedented attention to the WNBA. On the other, that attention comes with expectations and egos, and apparently locker room tension. So what now? Well, Kelsey Plum took a bit of a PR hit here. Her moment of real talk didn't land the way she thought. Instead of sparking accountability, it sparked backlash. Fans felt like she broke rank and kicked someone while they were down. Literally, Caitlyn? She came out of this looking cool, composed, and maybe just a little intimidating. The kind of player who doesn't need to scream to be heard, who can turn one comment into a tidal wave, a silent assassin in sneakers. The league? Let's just say they've got some things to figure out, like how to balance their rising star power with the respect and support of the veterans who built the house. And maybe, just maybe, how to avoid letting a 12-second soundbite steal the entire weekend. In the end, the All-Star Game will be remembered less for who scored the most points or who wore what, and more for that press conference and that comment. The shirt said, "Pay us what you owe us." But the real cost of this drama, public trust, team unity, and a whole lot of media spin. Moral of the story? If you're going to make a statement, make sure it uplifts the whole team, not just your mic drop moment. And if you're Caitlin Clark, maybe you don't even need to show up to win the narrative. Sometimes, the loudest message is the one whispered under an Instagram post. Let's be honest, this wasn't just some spicy press conference moment. This was a full-blown turning point in WNBA drama, the kind of off-court chaos that makes fans forget the box score and refresh their feed instead. Because what we just witnessed wasn't about one comment. It was about pressure, about power, about what happens when you put a spotlight the size of Iowa on one rookie's shoulders, and then act surprised when things start to crack. And crack they did. After Kelsey Plum's call-out, the press started doing what they always do, digging, theorizing, amplifying. Reports began to leak that this wasn't just a one-off line. Allegedly, there had already been tension brewing behind the scenes for weeks. Some players felt that Caitlyn and her squad weren't fully integrating into the league culture, that they weren't showing up in the way veterans had hoped. Others whispered that the meeting Plum referenced was actually about organizing the protests and ensuring everyone was aligned on the messaging. So when Team Clark didn't show, it wasn't just seen as a scheduling conflict. It was interpreted as a statement, a silent opt-out of solidarity. Whether that's true or not doesn't really matter, because perception is reality in a league that's fighting tooth and nail for national attention. And this moment, it handed the internet a fresh new narrative. Suddenly, Caitlyn wasn't just the face of the league. She was also being painted as a problem. Too big, too famous, too silent when it counted. And yet, the backlash didn't hit her. Not really. If anything, it ricocheted, because what Caitlin Clark represents is complicated. She's a symbol of what could be possible for women's basketball when everything finally clicks. media coverage, fan engagement, corporate sponsorship, cultural relevance. She's a rare case of a rookie being treated like a 10-year vet because her brand is just that strong. And that's what makes her both powerful and polarizing. Some players see her rise and feel inspired. Others feel erased. The league's been around for nearly 30 years. But suddenly it feels like there was before Caitlin and after Caitlin. That kind of spotlight doesn't just shine, it burns. So Plum's frustration? It's probably not just about one meeting. It's about years of hustle being overshadowed by one person who walked in and immediately became the headline. But here's the thing, that's not Caitlin's fault. She didn't ask to be the golden child. She just is. She played her heart out in college, broke records, stayed classy, stayed consistent, and brought her audience with her. She's not a fluke, she's a phenomenon, and the league knows it. Behind the scenes, executives are fully aware that Caitlin Clark sells tickets. Her name spikes viewership. Her jersey prints money. So even if there's tension in the locker room, there's no confusion in the boardroom. This is their cash cow. And protecting her image? Priority number one. That's what makes Kelsey Plum's outburst even more surprising. It wasn't just a stray comment. It was a risk. You don't call out the league's crown jewel unless you're ready for some fallout. And oh, did it come. The day after the press conference, social media split like Moses parting the Red Sea. On one side, diehard Caitlin stans who viewed her as a victim of jealousy and gatekeeping. On the other, longtime WNBA supporters who felt the newer players, especially the media darlings, needed to earn their stripes instead of bypassing the system. It wasn't just a feud anymore. It was a generational divide. The veterans versus the rookies. The grinders versus the glam. And somewhere in the middle, a lead trying to convince everyone they're all on the same team. Good luck with that. Because now, everything Caitlin does or doesn't do is viewed through a magnifying glass. Skip a meeting? You're not committed. Stay silent? You're being passive. Say too much? You're ungrateful. It's a lose-lose scenario. And it's eerily familiar to what we've seen with other breakout stars in other industries. The second they become too big, people stop rooting for them and start resenting them. Meanwhile, Kelsey Plum, she didn't exactly walk away from this clean. Even some of her supporters admitted that her delivery was off. The message may have been rooted in something real, but calling someone out during a moment meant to be about unity? It gave off high school in the hallway energy. And for someone who's been in the league long enough to know better, it felt like a tactical fumble, not to mention the irony. Because while the players were wearing shirts that demanded respect and equal treatment, one of their own was using a global platform to publicly single out a teammate. That's not solidarity. That's sabotage. And here's what's really wild. All of this overshadowed the actual point of the protest. The pay equity conversation got drowned out by the feud. The media stopped talking about salaries and started dissecting side eyes. The hashtag became drama fodder. And for a movement that was supposed to bring attention to the league's systemic issues, it ended up exposing the ones inside the locker room. Poetic, isn't it? But let's bring it back to Caitlin for a second, because her response, if you can even call it that, deserves a gold medal in media strategy. One cryptic comment, one subtle shade, and that's it. No press tour, no emotional IG live, just a silence and a smirk. And it worked, because sometimes saying nothing says everything. She knew that if she jumped into the chaos, it would become a war. Instead, she let Plum's comment hang in the air, and then watched as public opinion turned her into the cool, composed protagonist. A silent queen letting her throne speak for itself. And as for the league, they're scrambling. Because the worst-kept secret in sports right now is that the WNBA's marketing strategy has become dangerously Caitlin-centric. And while that's great when she's winning games and charming press conferences, it becomes a PR liability the second she misses a meeting or skips an event. Which brings us to the real question. Is this sustainable? Can the WNBA afford to build its entire media ecosystem around one person? What happens if she gets injured again? What happens if she pulls a burnout move and takes a step back? Or worse, what if she stops playing nice? The truth is, this drama was a warning shot. It showed us how fragile the balance really is. how quickly the narrative can shift, and how desperately the league needs to figure out its identity beyond one superstar. Because right now, the WNBA is walking a tightrope. On one side, the promise of mainstream success. On the other, the risk of internal implosion. And as much as we love the tea, let's not pretend this is just harmless gossip. These moments have ripple effects. They shape how new fans see the league. They determine what clips get reposted and what stories get told. And if the WNBA wants to grow, it can't afford to let petty infighting replace powerful messaging. So here we are, one weekend, one press conference, one viral comment. And now, everything feels different. Kelsey Plum might have lit the match, but the league handed her the lighter. And Caitlin Clark? She didn't just walk away untouched. She walked away stronger, more iconic, more watched, more powerful. Which means the next time someone comes for her, they better be ready. Because Clark may be quiet, but she's not soft. And if there's one thing this entire debacle proved, it's that the real power move is staying unbothered. All right, let's keep going, because the story doesn't stop with one shady comment and a cryptic Instagram reply. If anything, that was just a pilot episode. What happened next turned into a slow-burning feud. One that exposed cracks in the WNBA's glossy exterior. And honestly, it gave reality TV a run for its money. After the press conference fallout, league insiders started whispering. And while no one went on the record, the body language on the court said enough. During warm-ups, certain glances weren't exchanged. Celebrations felt forced. Group photos looked tense. And fans noticed. You don't need to be a lip reader to clock icy vibes when the entire bench stops clapping after someone sinks a three. Now remember, Caitlin Clark wasn't even at the game. She was still nursing her injury, away from the cameras, away from the drama. And yet somehow, her name was still trending for 3 days straight. Every time a player posted a story or shared a highlight, fans would flood the comments. Where's Caitlin? Did she skip another meeting? Is she going to respond? It was wild, and this is where the power dynamics really started to show. Because while the league tried to pivot the conversation back to unity and celebrating women's sports, the internet wasn't having it. This wasn't just a sports moment anymore. It had turned into a full-blown culture war, and the sides were clear. On one end, you had WNBA traditionalists, fans who've been here from the jump, who've watched Kelsey Plum, and others build the league brick by brick. For them, Caitlin's sudden fame felt like someone skipping the line. Not just a new player, but a new era, and one that wasn't giving enough credit to the vets. On the other side, the Clark Hive. New fans, casuals, Gen Z stans, Iowa loyalists, and people who discovered the WNBA because they saw a Caitlin Clark highlight on TikTok. They don't care about hierarchy. They care about talent, charisma, and, let's be honest, drama. So when Plum dropped that line, it didn't just poke the bear. It launched a civil war. And here's where things got even messier. Sponsors. Yep, the corporate side of things jumped in. Suddenly, companies that had been quietly testing the WNBA waters started pulling some strings behind the scenes. Because guess what? A brand that just spent 6 figures on a Caitlin Clark campaign doesn't love seeing her being targeted by one of the league's top veterans. It's bad optics. So meetings were had, calls were made, and reportedly, a few uncomfortable conversations were held with PR reps about tone, narrative, and damage control. Translation, don't mess with the money. Meanwhile, Kelsey Plum tried to walk it back, She didn't issue a formal apology, but she made a few vague, peacekeeping comments in interviews. Things like, we're all passionate, or tensions run high, or at the end of the day, we're on the same team. Nice try, but the damage was done, and fans weren't buying the cleanup act. Comments on her posts were filled with popcorn emojis and snarky digs like, still mad she sells more jerseys? Or, you sound like someone who doesn't trend. Brutal. And yet, somehow, Caitlin kept quiet. Another power play. No interviews. No shade. Just subtle posts about recovery, workouts, and gratitude. The kind of content that doesn't fan the flames, but still earns millions of likes. It was clear she wasn't going to feed the drama. she was going to outlast it. And let's be real, it worked. Because slowly, the conversation started to shift. The initial backlash, it mellowed out. The tension, still there but quieter. And Caitlyn, back on her feet, back in training, and very much back in control of her narrative. But the league? Oh, the league was sweating. Because now, they were facing a terrifying question. What if this happens again? What if another player publicly calls her out? What if more locker room beef spills into media? Worse, what if Caitlyn gets sick of being the punching bag and starts pushing back? Suddenly, the WNBA wasn't just managing athletes. They were managing egos, personal brands, fan bases. It's the kind of stuff the NBA has dealt with for years. But for the W, it's new territory, high stakes, and very, very public. And that's when the league did something subtle, but telling. They shifted the narrative. In the weeks following the All-Star debacle, PR efforts ramped up. Promo spots started featuring multiple stars instead of just Caitlyn. Media interviews became more focused on the future of the league, not just the face of it. It was a clear attempt to rebalance the spotlight, to make sure fans didn't think the WNBA was just the Caitlin Clark show. But let's be honest, it is a Caitlin Clark show, at least for now. She's the one selling out arenas. She's the one bringing in new viewers. And whether that's fair or not to the vets, it's a reality. So where does that leave Kelsey Plum? In a bit of a limbo, honestly.